Horse Chats. We're so glad you're here. We're really excited to saddle up and talk about all things equine today. I'm Brittany Sweeney, Communications Manager at the Livestock Conservancy, and here with me today is Senior Program Manager Charlene Couch and Angelia Silvera. She's our special guest. We're so excited to talk to her about donkeys and horses. It's going to be real fun. So I hope you're as excited as we are. Quick reminder as we get started here, please leave us a comment and let us know you're here. Send us your donkey and horse questions, and we'll get to those at the end. I know it's always my favorite part. People always ask the most interesting things. So leave us a Facebook comment, and we will get to that after we have a quick chat with Angelia here. Also, before we get started, thank you to the NC Horse Council and to Premier One. Their generous support of the Livestock Conservancy helps make programs like Horse Chats possible. So if y'all are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. Charlene, do you want to introduce Angelia?
Yeah, I would love to. This is Angelia Silvera. She lives in southeastern Tennessee, and she is known as the donkey listener, which is really wonderful. So the Livestock Conservancy works with 3 different breeds of donkeys, the American Mammoth Jack, the Poitou, and the miniature donkey. And Angelia, I think you started in the horse world, right? How did you come to donkeys?
No, I actually did start out with donkeys. I started out because I needed a livestock guardian, for my goats and the poultry. I had tried the livestock guardian dogs, just did not work out for me. I tried llamas, and it didn't work out. And that led me to donkeys. And I fell in love with them, and it just spiraled out of control. The donkey love.
That's so neat. So I know that you've worked with both types of equine. How would you say that they are different in the way that they think and your approach to training?
Well, with horses, they typically are trained with a lot of pressure release, natural horsemanship, and they respond well to that. With the donkey, they tend to get a little bit sour if you give them too much pressure, and positive reinforcement has worked better for me, like clicker training, liberty and stuff like that. Liberty with reward, not with lots of pressure like you would do with a horse. They like to think things over, so you've got to be more patient. I mean, they're not going to move quickly. And so that's some of the differences. And, I just got a lot farther along with donkeys using positive reinforcement methods. With the horses, they definitely use you can use positive reinforcement too, of course, but it tends to be a little bit quicker with them to use pressure release, I feel like. But with the donkey, they just take offense or something to like, what are you pushing on me for? So I don't really introduce pressure release to my donkeys training program until, I've got my training programs in like levels, and level 3 is when I start introducing pressure release. And by the time I get to level 3, we've already went through like trust building and desensitizing. They've already started hiking with me and doing liberty. So we have this partnership, kind of made, and the donkey knows me. And then when I start using some pressure, the donkey doesn't take offense to it. Yeah. They're just more willing to work with me because they know me. They need to know you. They need to trust you. Where horses react, donkeys like to think it over.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where some of the misconceptions about donkeys being so stubborn comes from, because we put pressure on and we expect them to act like horses, and they say, no, thank you.
They just don't see a reason to do that, especially if they don't know you. If they don't trust you, it's like, why should I? they've kind of got that attitude like, why should I? So
Right. So it's that relationship development piece that's the most important in training, it sounds like.
absolutely. It blows my mind how, I mean, like loading a donkey is a hard thing. Getting a donkey to load, that's one of the things people complain about the most. They can't get their donkey to load. But once you've went through lots of different trust building exercises and like going through obstacles on an obstacle course or something like that, I find that they typically, especially in a livestock trailer, they'll typically load right up without an issue.
Wow.
So, but you've got that trust. They trust you. So that's a little different.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about your Facebook page, and you said, well, I'll let you tell everybody, what's the most common training question you get from people about donkeys?
They can't halter their donkey. I get that, how do I get a halter on my donkey? And that goes to a lot of people just don't train them. They just don't. And even if you just want a livestock guardian, you need to be able to halter the donkey and get it from point A to point B. You need to halter it so it can get farrier care, vet care. And a lot of people just don't think like that because that's just not something you typically need to do with goats and sheep and stuff that donkeys might be guarding. So, the realization sets in when they get that donkey home and they're like, oh, I need to get this donkey to the barn or, to the farrier or something. And so they can't halter it. It's never been trained. The donkey might not trust that person. When I rehome a donkey to somebody, I have to make it really clear that just because they do all this stuff for me doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it for you right away. You've got to show them that you're okay and you're not going to hurt them. They can trust you. And then all the training I've put into the donkey will come out. But you have to, the donkey is very, I guess, handler oriented. They really bond to a person. Mm-hmm. And so that training isn't automatically transferred to the next person sometimes.
Right. Wow. Yeah, training is a huge consideration with donkeys. But so is other care. It does differ from horses. Can you talk about some of those differences?
A little bit different is the donkey. It's more similar to like a pony or a miniature horse in that it gets fat really easy. Donkeys tend to get very, very fat very easily. You can't give them grain. They don't need a lot of starches, or if any starches. They don't need high protein. Alfalfa is a big no-no. And so a lot of horse food is just not going to be good for donkeys. They're going to get fat, especially if you have a donkey that doesn't work. You're not, out riding it or plowing your field or something. And, they just get fat pretty easy. So that's a little different. And their hoof care is a little bit different. Their hoofs are shaped a little bit different. They're harder than horses. So you've got to kind of find a farrier that understands that the donkey doesn't act like a horse. They're going to have to be a little bit slower and get the donkey to accept them. And just understand that their hooves are so much harder. And a lot of times you have to lower their heel and take some off of the sole. A lot of times we don't have to do that with horses. They're just not that hard. So, but the donkey's hoof is very hard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would assume that if you can't get a halter on your donkey, then you can't get your donkey's feet taken care of.
No, and hoof care, it is just as important. And I mean, the no hoof, no horse saying, everybody knows that one. It's the same, that no hoof, no donkey. I mean, your donkey can't guard your livestock if it can't walk good.
Right.
And, I mean, I go a little bit crazy when I see people not getting their donkey's hoofs trimmed because it's only a matter of time. And, if the donkey can't walk, it can't protect your livestock. It can't do anything. So hoof care is super important, just like it is for a horse. And that's something I don't think people understand necessarily, unless they do have equine experience.
Yeah. So how do you deal with farrier-y type issues since their feet are so hard?
Well, we have a lot of farriers here in Tennessee, but they don't necessarily like to trim donkeys because the donkey is a little bit quirky about, I don't know who this guy is or, what's that tool. So I actually desensitize my donkeys to all the farrier tools. I have a whole collection of farrier tools, even before I started trying to do it myself. So I could just show the donkey, okay, this isn't going to hurt you. We'd use positive reinforcement. I train the donkeys to target things to get them used to an object. And that really, really helps a lot. That finding a farrier can be difficult that understands donkeys. And I had to start learning to trim myself, like pretty hardcore this year because my farrier decided just not to show up. I had all these donkeys needing hoof care. So that was a challenge, but there are resources to help you learn to trim your donkey hoofs. And I was very thankful for those.
Yeah.
So
folks need to
train them. That's really smart.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, talk about that a second more, about the target training and how you do the clicker.
The target training it's the positive reinforcement method. It's once you train your donkey to understand what I call treat manners, where they understand they have to perform a certain way, they have to do a certain thing in order to get a treat, which keeps them from biting me, because that's probably another big question. How do I get my donkey to stop biting me? I'm like, well, stop treating it for no reason. For one thing, they need to learn they only get treats when they've given you a desirable behavior. So I train them treat manners, and I've got several videos of that on YouTube, several different donkeys where I show how to train treat manners. And once I train them with treat manners, then I start getting them to target something, and I'll have them target like the halter. I'll just hold the halter up. Now the donkey he's curious, and so if he even leans forward to that halter, I will, I don't use a clicker most of the time. I just pop with my mouth. And that's the signal that I've done something right and I'm about to get a treat. So if they even lean in toward the halter, I'll give the signal and reward. And then we work up to that until they start targeting the halter. And then I'll have them target lead ropes and, different like farrier tools, syringes. If I've got a vet coming out, I'll like show the donkey the syringe and have them target the syringe and show it kind of going into the neck. See, it's okay, and, I'll reward them for all that. And it really, I use targeting a lot. It's part of my foundation training because it leads to so many different other things, from getting them to accept obstacles to, like I said, different kinds of care, syringes, tools, haltering, so much. Wow. So it's just, and I've got videos on all that, targeting, treat manners.
I watched one of your videos on teaching your donkey to load onto a horse trailer. That was just the sweetest thing I've ever seen, and your donkey was so calm.
Yeah. I think that was that Jasper? Was it the one with Jasper? Where he just followed me in.
followed you.
Yeah, I mean, once I get a donkey to the point where it trusts me and it's hiking with me and and it's loving all these little games that we do. Most of the time, especially in a livestock trailer, they'll just follow me in. There's no need to chase the donkey around and, whip it and do all this crazy stuff. Just put in a little homework, little time, and usually the donkey will just follow me. He trusts me. So, the only time I might have trouble where I have to kind of take a step back and then I'll do like some different kinds of training that lead up to loading is if I'm loading in a difficult trailer, like one with a really tiny opening, because to a donkey, all trailers are not equal. They might load in one and then it's like that trailer is tiny. So you have to get them used to the new trailer.
Right.
So, but it usually doesn't take long, 4 or 5 sessions. Little targeting, they come right in.
Oh, wow. Can you teach my horse that?
People do use positive reinforcement with horses too. They do. I mean, I have one horse and I've played around with positive reinforcement with her. The problem I have with her in positive reinforcement is she tends to want to just focus on that treat. So crazy. It's like, I don't know. She just has an overactive mind for the reward. And so it's hard to get her to concentrate on other stuff, where the donkey, I don't know, they're thinking all the time and they're making decisions all the time. You can just see their little gears working.
Yeah, horses do tend to react first and think second.
They do. I mean, and if you want something that's going to be super light, you can get a horse to be super light and just move at the tiniest little bit of pressure or movement. Like you might put pressure there, the horse will sometimes move, but donkeys typically don't. They're a heavier animal. They just don't typically get that light. The saddle donkey I've been working with the most, I've been working with him for like 1.5 years, and he is just now getting to where he will move off of leg pressure. It's taken a really long time to get him to move off leg pressure because the pressure just doesn't mean he just don't care. He just don't really care about stuff like that. So, it's a lot of patience with the donkeys, a lot of time.
Yeah.
But it is so worth it. It's so worth it because they're such just a solid thinking animal. And as much as I do like horses, I feel safer on the trail with a donkey.
Oh, wow. So you use your donkeys for trail riding a lot, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's all I ride on the trails now.
Oh.
Yeah. We trailer them and go to some of the mountains around here and go trail riding. I horse camp with my donkey. So
Okay.
and they're really good on rougher terrain. We got a lot of rocks on the mountains here in Tennessee, and my donkey, he can handle those rocks way better than the horse, even if the horse has shoes, and donkey can handle it way better without shoes.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's an advantage, the sure-footedness and those hard hoofs,
Right.
being able to handle the rocks.
Yeah, that's really neat. So what else can you do with a donkey?
Well, I mean, pretty much anything you can do with a horse, you can do with a donkey.
Okay.
I teach them to drive. I'm starting to kind of get into doing some farm work with them, some hauling. I'd like to do some more. I got a plow. I actually have a horse-drawn plow now. And I'm working with one of my donkeys to get him to be able to pull it. Because we do, I do like to garden and do a lot of stuff like that. And it's like I got all this donkey power. Might as well put it to use because I do train them to drive. And, they're a step away from, the farm tools. I mean, the biggest problem with the farm tools for me is just understanding the farm tools because that's not common knowledge. What do I need to turn this field and plant this field? I mean, I've got to learn all that, but a donkey can certainly plow a field. And I mean, they can pull, they're so strong. And of course, they're really, really good at packing, really good at packing. I hike a lot with my donkeys. I love hiking with them. So they can carry lunch,
Right.
Important things.
One of the most surprising things I've seen people mention about donkeys is the production of donkey milk for people that can't get their milk and for cosmetics. I think that's so interesting.
Well, for a while, I made donkey milk soap and cosmetics. I'm an esthetician, so it kind of just went into my education there, just to make some skincare products. And it's pretty amazing. Donkey milk is pretty amazing. I kind of got away from that when I got more into the training. There's only so many hours in the day, so I started focusing more on the training. But donkey milk, I know it's huge in Europe, and it is really good for the skin, I have to say. But and I would imagine that like the mammoths and the larger donkeys would give a lot more milk. But I had a small standard that gave me a quart a day. So in her peak, at her peak, she gave me a quart a day. So I mean that made a lot of soap. So and I did drink it because at the time I was having like some digestive problems that nothing else seemed to help, and it just cleared them up just quick. So donkey milk is pretty amazing. And donkey breeding donkeys can be a little tricky, difficult, because jacks, dealing with an intact jack can be a little challenging. I mean, any stud's going to be challenging, because they're running on testosterone. You can't reason with that. So,
yeah. So how is that? Is it just because the jack is hard to handle, or is reproduction itself kind of what's different there?
It's the handling of the jack for me. Handling the stud, because I mean, I don't know how to really put it. It's just a challenge because there's just nothing you can do once that jack knows that Jenny's in heat. He is going to get to her. He's going to. And there's really nothing you can do about it unless you've got like really tall fencing or electric or something like that. And I'm not one to like get overly into using force. That's just not me. I mean, I know handling studs, a lot of people use the stud chains and stuff like that. And I've used stud chains, but it's just not really what I like to do. I don't like being rough, I guess. So it takes an experienced hand to understand the donkey's hormones, I guess. And their ritual is pretty rough if you don't know, because they fight a lot. I mean, the Jenny will kick his butt. it looks rough.
Wow.
And that can be quite shocking to people. And, and I'll get questions about that. And, my advice most of the time is just like, stay back, don't get in there. But, because, they worry about the Jenny hurting the Jack or the Jack hurting the Jenny. And so it's something that if you're going to breed donkeys, you've got to be aware of that they are rough. The Jack is rough, the Jenny's rough. It's just what they do.
Well, that's really good to know.
Yeah, because it can be kind of shocking to see them throw down like that. It's like, wow. I mean, is she going to kill him? I mean, what's going on? I was like horrified. I think the first time I had a Jack go after a Jenny, I'm like, and I had sheep and goats. I was raised with cattle, but the donkey is, Jacks can just be something to handle. And I think people need to realize that, because I get some panicked people contacting me about that.
Right.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And keeping 2 Jacks, that's another big question. Can I keep 2 Jacks together? No, you shouldn't keep 2 Jacks together. They can kill one another. It's just what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's important.
And I don't know about horses. I don't know how the studs are with horses. I don't know if you can keep them together or what. But that's always a crazy question. Can I keep 2 Jacks together?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of questions, do you have time to take a few from our listeners today?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Go ahead and pull those up. Let's see. Joyce says, "Hi, ladies." Mm-hmm. Hi, Joyce. Thanks for tuning in today and learning about donkeys. Mary says, "Hey from Fort Myers, Florida." Hey, Mary. Thanks for tuning in today. We're glad you're here. Karina Rapp says, "Interesting topic. So thanks for tuning in and talking about donkeys today."
Hey, Karina.
Teresa says, "Thank you for horse chats." Thank you for listening. Karina wants to know, what do you feed your donkeys? Is it grass, pasture, hay only? Do they browse brush or weeds? How is the accepted natural habitat of a donkey different from that of a horse?
Well, I am far from the natural habitat of a donkey. Here in East Tennessee, we have softer ground. We have a lot of grass. So it is easy for a donkey to get fat here if they have lush rolling pasture. Luckily, my land is more weeds than it is grass, and I do have a lot of wood lots. So that keeps my donkeys in pretty good shape. But if somebody has a donkey that they want to put on a lot of rich pasture, they might have problems. They might get hoof problems. Donkeys get a lot of hoof problems too from too much starch, too much sugar in their diet. As far as hay, mixed grass hay, nothing rich, nothing fancy. And it needs to be low in starches as well, low in sugars. Some people, especially with mini donkeys get fat on air, and a lot of people feed them straw and standards too. A lot of people feed straw, like barley straw, which is not something I can get easily in Tennessee. Now the mammoths, though, is kind of the opposite for me. I have to feed them a lot more food, but I still have to watch their sugars. They still can't have sugar or they'll get hoof problems. Mm-hmm. So with the mammoths, I give them a lot of just extra hay, beet pulp without molasses, no molasses. Make sure they get good minerals, no iron. They need a mineral that doesn't have extra iron in it because that can affect their hoofs also. So feeding, it's a little different than like a full-size horse, just because they do get fat easy and have a lot of trouble with the sugars, which is not natural for them to get a lot of sugar and starch in their diet. And they love weeds. They love brush, trees. They will eat your trees, certain trees. I had some mulberry trees that were doing beautifully until the donkeys got a hold of them. So the mulberry no more. But I actually have a video up on my Facebook page today of some donkeys in a woodlot, and they're just like devouring like a little tree, just wiping it out. So that's it's different, because typically the horse doesn't eat like that. She's more grass oriented, where the donkeys will go after the brush a little bit more and brambles.
Great question.
Okay.
And good to know about the trees. Like, guard your trees. Let's see. Madeline wants to know, do donkeys behave differently on the trails when they meet strange horses than a horse would? Actually, how do donkeys behave when they meet strange equines?
They're curious about them, but honestly, I've seen more bad reactions from the other horses on the trail, because they get scared because they don't know what that is sometimes. What is that creature with the long ears? So, but as far as my donkeys go, because they are used to seeing a horse, and they don't really care about horses. As long as the horse doesn't come near them, they don't really care. At least mine don't. But sometimes other people's horses who maybe have never seen a donkey, sometimes other horses get reactive. And so that owner will have to calm her horse down.
Great question, Madeline. Yeah. Joyce wants to know, do you drive your donkeys?
I do. I train some of them to drive. I usually ground drive all of them, and I teach all of them to pull something, because it's good for them. It's good exercise. And before I get in the saddle, I'll typically ground drive a lot, because that helps me start teaching the animal communication before I'm sitting on its back. And then it's thinking about me sitting on its back. And I want it to think about that communication before I get on its back. So, like, all of them are taught to ground drive and taught to at least drag a tire. And then some of them, if that is their future, I'll teach them to drive and pull carts.
Neat.
That's great. Joyce also wants to know, due to the trust issue not readily being transferred, is it best to buy young donkeys to raise your own?
I wouldn't say it's best. I think it depends on what you want. The thing about buying a young one and raising it on your own, you're going to have to wait a really long time before you can actually ride that donkey or drive it, because especially with the mammoths, they're pretty slow maturing. And so you don't want to get on it until it's like 4 or 5 years old, typically. So it depends on how much patience you have, because if you have a mammoth that's already trained, you might have to spend a little bit of time getting to know that donkey and going through like some trust exercises and stuff like that. But you're going to be riding that donkey way sooner than you would if you bought a young donkey and raised it. So there's pros and cons to both, and it just depends on what you are looking for.
Great questions, Joyce. Someone from the Livestock Conservancy wants to know, how do donkeys react to unexpected things such as snakes on the trail?
They don't even see snakes. I mean,
what? I know I see snakes.
I don't know how many times I have seen a snake on the trail and it like slithers right by us, and my donkey's just like, continues on. Just,
That's amazing.
we just keep going. Now, dogs, depending on the donkey, dogs could be an issue on the trail. And I try to go on trails where, either dogs aren't allowed on trails, or I know that it's reinforced that the dog's going to be on a leash. Because a dog running around, I mean, if it runs around your donkey, I mean, donkeys have this really strong instinct to sometimes stomp canines. So that might get into a little bit of a mess, especially if you do have a donkey. Like I have a donkey right now that's extremely canine aggressive. He does not want a dog within 20 foot of him. And if it comes in his area, he is going after it. And I am positive he would go after it even if I was on his back. So that might get messy. Might make some people mad at you if your donkey stomped their dog. So that's definitely something I'm aware of. I want to know how this donkey reacts to canines before I take it on a public trail. And I definitely want to know, like, what are the rules of this trail? I mean, or do dogs typically come here without a leash, or maybe if it's a donkey that is canine aggressive, I will want to just avoid trails that allow dogs altogether.
Right.
That's great.
That seems like a trait that would make them, that's part of what makes them good guardians, right?
It is, but not all of them have that trait.
Oh, okay.
It just depends. Because I've got one mammoth donkey out here. I mean, he thinks dogs are his friend. I mean, he wants to walk up to him and say, "Hey, buddy," wants to bump noses. And then I've got some that are just like, as soon as they see a dog, they're on guard. And they're ready, and their ears are forward, and they're ready to, like, stomp. So it just depends. But overall, if an unknown dog just runs up to them, most of them will take a more aggressive stance. I have a couple that might run, but for the most part, most of them are going to protect themselves.
Right.
So know your donkey and know your trail before you go.
Yeah. You want to know if you're going to go on those outside, off the farm trails.
Good question. Gabrielle wants to know, WBUR's Only a Game sports show had a great story on pack burro racing. Do you know anything about pack burro racing?
I do. There's a virtual pack burro race going on this fall, and I've been training one of my donkeys for it. Training myself, really. I mean, the donkey's got, he can run 3 miles no problem. So I've been training myself, really. But pack burro racing is really an interesting sport out west. It's not popular out in the east, unfortunately. I wish it was.
So what happens during a pack burro race? I've never seen one.
I think it started in Colorado. The Western Colorado Pack Burro Association is what you want to look up for all the details on the burro racing. There's a lot of people into it out there. I saw one race. I think there was like 70 people that entered it. And it always cracks me up because when, donkeys react differently. And, and some donkeys, when they take off, it's like they're dragging their person, like, let's go. And then sometimes it's the opposite. They're dragging the donkey. Come on, let's go. But some donkeys really get into it. And now I've got some donkeys, if I tried to make them run for more than, a minute, they would not be happy. But then I've got some donkeys that they really get into it, and they'll just I'll jog and they'll just come right alongside me.
Wow.
Really nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fun.
That's neat. There's so many fun things you can do with donkeys, I mean, the same thing with horses, of course, but
Yeah.
like I've seen donkeys do dressage and actually really mop up. I've seen, well, of course, donkeys hauling things and carrying things, but donkeys jumping, uh,
Oh,
it's just so neat.
they're good at jumping. They are really good at jumping.
Wow.
That's cool. Let's see. Madeline wants to know, are smaller donkeys more active than the mammoths? She read that mammoths weren't good as guard animals because they were slower and less likely to chase coyotes.
I don't know that I would say that they're more active. I think miniature donkeys can be, I call them sassy. I think they're sassy. I don't know that they're more active because my mammoths, they get into some hardcore play. I mean, they like to rear up and chase each other and kick each other. And, they have a lot of fun out there. And, certainly the minis do too. But now, as far as the mammoths being a guard, I don't know that it's because they're slow, because I've got some mammoths that, I mean, they'll canter. I mean, you can ride them. They will canter. They'll go. And I've got one that's gated and he can go. So it's not that they're slower, but they tend to be more laid back, I guess. And, it's kind of like they don't want trouble. They're just not, they would rather stand back and maybe observe the situation, maybe walk away from it, where then I've got some standards that they don't even want to wait. They just want to go and stomp the dog, But the mammoths tend to be a little bit more, I don't want to say lazy, just, I don't know, docile, maybe a little bit more docile. And when you think about it, it's like, well, they have been purposely bred, probably more so than the standards have. And, when you trait breed something, you can bring out those traits. So, and mammoths tend to have a very docile, laid-back temperament. And I think that may be because just the way they're bred, whereas the standards and the minis, maybe they haven't been bred for that. I don't know.
Okay.
But that's a good question, because I often wondered that. It's like, because I had this mini donkey that would like run up to fences and, when he would see a dog and act like he was going to, whoop some butt and, just really crazy acting. And the mammoths would just stand back and just be like, whatever, just, they didn't want to posture. They didn't want to do any of that like he would do. But just a more laid back personality.
Yeah, that's neat.
Very
Have
interesting.
you ever met any Poitou donkeys?
I have not.
Oh,
They're
missing
so
out.
cool, but I have not met any in person.
Yeah, they're very cool.
Let's see, we got a few more questions. Have you ever worked with BLM donkeys?
I have not. I have not. Other than helping other people train them, I've never worked with them personally. I have a lot of owners of BLM donkeys in my training group, and I've helped a lot of them get their donkeys trained so they can be more easily handled, and the training is the same.
Excellent. Susan said she's made it from South Carolina. Thanks for joining us today, Susan.
Susan.
She also had a question. Are nutritional needs just like horses? If not, what differences are they?
It's mostly just, like I said before, it's the sugars and the starches, the proteins, and they can't have the high sugars, the high starches, or the high proteins.
Mm-hmm.
Much lower, a lot more roughage and fiber.
Great question.
Yeah.
Angelia, how many donkeys do you have?
I have 6 right now. And I try to keep it under control. I try. It's hard. It's hard because I see them and I want to go get them and train them, and then I think, well, I'll train it and I'll rehome it, and then I don't. And
Right. You get attached.
I have cats like that.
Yeah, and I do worry about them. Ending up in a bad situation. So because so many of them do end up in kill pens, and it just breaks my heart.
Mhm. I
Absolutely.
agree.
Looks like we have one more come in. Madeline wants to know, where did you get your first donkey and what size was it?
My first donkey I got was a standard donkey, and I got it off of Craigslist. It was just an advertisement.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, I need a guard. This donkey's been around sheep already, so I knew it wasn't going to kill, my goats or, my small livestock. And so I went for it.
That's great. What's your favorite thing about donkeys? What do you love most about them?
What's my favorite thing about them?
Mm-hmm. It might be hard to narrow down to just one.
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it down to just one. I would probably say just the way they think things through. Because after working with horses and donkeys, I prefer that. I prefer for the animal to think it through, even though it may take longer for me to train a donkey. I prefer the end result of that thinking animal, as opposed to a more reactive animal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if folks visit your website, they can learn lots about donkey training, right? You do training videos and classes.
I've got lots about training, behavior, and just donkey care in general.
So if people have just fallen in love with donkeys, what's the best thing they can do to get involved in?
Like get their first donkey, or
do that. I guess just go to your website and learn more about them, or
I usually tell people if they want to get a donkey to first think about, what do you want the donkey for? I mean, because if you want to ride it, you need to make sure it's big enough to ride. And donkeys they're stronger than a horse of the same size, so they can carry a lot of weight. But that's usually what I tell people when they fall in love with a donkey and they're like, oh, I want to get a donkey. I'm like, okay, what do you want it for? And then you need to try to find that donkey that is going to fit what you want to do with it. If you do want it for a guard, you need to make sure that it is a little aggressive toward canines, but it won't hurt your goats or sheep or poultry. Because I have had some donkeys, a couple of donkeys kill poultry. So it's not, a common thing, but sometimes they will. So you want to make sure, that you're getting a donkey that's going to fit your needs.
Absolutely.
Great stuff.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today and spending time with us. Is there anything that you want to leave us with? Anything we didn't ask you that you think people should know?
I don't think so. Just that, if you are looking to get into donkeys, just, do your research, think about what you want to use the donkey for. If you're wanting to get into one of the bigger breeds, make sure that, you understand, its needs. If you've got horse experience, make sure you understand the differences that you might be challenged with. That's probably it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Angelia. This has been fun.
Thank you. I enjoy talking about donkeys with you guys.
I can tell.
We love
Thank
it.
you.
Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in today. We will be back next week. We are talking about goats next month, so we hope you're excited to talk about goats as much as we are, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.